Hello everyone, my name is Yosh, and today we'll be talking about Sheetify, hopefully without feedback. That would be great. I am very much into Unix. I do Node. Can everyone see the slides, by the way? All good? Cool. I do Node, I do consulting. I make my slides in my terminal because I don't like making complicated things. I'm kind of a grumpy old man. If you're like, I've got a big page with fancy things, I'm like, bad person, don't do that. I'm very opinionated in making tiny things. And that is kind of the reason why I'm doing this talk, because I like making things for the web, and JavaScript is cool. We can like optimize it. I can build a page in 11 kilobytes that has like all the React and Redux stuff. But these style sheet things are kind of annoying. I can't like do the whole NPM thing where I've like solved the problem, I just install the thing and it just works. So today we'll be talking about the thing I built to make CSS as easy as JavaScript is by leveraging NPM and some other cool techniques. So I'll be talking about design goals, which I'm kind of doing right now. Little overview of what the whole thing looks like, demos and comparisons and stuff. So Sheetify was built out of frustration, CSS, because I'm grumpy. But I've got some other constraints. I don't like breaking specifications. I quite like it when a language, when you like know a thing and we make that thing better. Like I don't like TypeScript, I don't like Sass, all that kind of stuff. I do like the new CSS specs. They're like kind of well defined. Everyone should know them. Same with JavaScript. Kind of an OO CSS kind of approach. Usually people tend to do a kind of BEME style thing with namespacing and all that sort of stuff, which is kind of clunky. I was like, let's make that one better by borrowing some of these from other people. And we want to make it extensible so that people can define their own optimizations and think of how to make CSS better. That's not up to me, that's up to everyone else. So this is basically what it looks like. Kind of part of it is falling off the screen. Oh no, it's not, actually. Perfect. Ignore the first line. The first line is just to make this thing correct. But the money thing is here. This is a JavaScript file, and it has CSS inline in a little template string over there. It says heading 1, text align center. And it returns a thing called prefix. Now, if you know CSS modules, this is kind of similar. Forget about that for a little moment. I'll come back to that later. But so we take that h1, we prefix it dynamically with a hash of the content. And then we return that hash, and we can set it as a class name, which means this whole block of CSS, you can like arbitrarily put rules in there, is now namespaced, which means I can define on every single page I have, or every single component, I can redeclare my h1s, and they will never conflict. Well, there's a 1 in 100,000 chance because the hashes are about that, but they will practically never conflict. This is a little thing which is kind of like JSX, like inline HTML. So we just set the little prefix over there. And then we have CSS that never conflicts and is defined inline next to my HTML. Because, you know, with object-oriented CSS, it's basically what we do, right? We recreate sort of the DOM and attach that to our components, and that's what we do. And now it's super convenient. Hey, well, that was my talk. No, kidding. So this is how you would use it. Sheetify is a Browserify plugin. Don't be afraid of Browserify. It's simpler than Webpack or Gulp, Grunt, whatever the hell. You say Browserify on the command line. You say pass it a transform called Sheetify/transform. Trying to figure out to make this a bit more convenient. But you say this is the root of my thing. index.js, and please output this to bundle.js. And then we get a JavaScript thing which styles inline. We can also make a separate CSS file. I'll show it later. This is the most basic command to do it. Browserify index.js, output to a thing, specify Sheetify as a plugin. Not too hard, I think. Oh, this is the source code. That's the command. And it outputs this thing. So our CSS is now namespace with a hash. And we've got our HTML, which now has a class, which has the hash. And then the h1 inside the class, it's targeted, and then we get that. Makes sense, right? Cool. Yeah, so this is how we would externalize the thing. We would do this subcommand syntax. This is all shell. You don't need to remember this because it's all nicely on the README page if you would so wish to explore further. You say output this file to bundle.css and output the rest of the browserify thing to bundle.js. And now you have a separate CSS file with all your NPM modules and stuff in it. Like super rad. Cool. Demos, because we want to make this kind of practical. You guys will be like, okay, this sounds like great, but show me what it's like. And that's what I'm going to do. Hey. Okay, so I've got a little live demo tool here. Basically, we're taking the first demo, and we're going to run it with a bunch of stuff. This is the first demo. We import a bunch of virtual DOM stuff. Don't worry about that. Here's our little inline style sheet. And the little problem we're trying to solve here is we want to target the section class. Now, we targeted the h1 before, but we want to target the section class, and we got the shadow DOM syntax for that. We kind of overloaded it. I said, don't break the spec. Kind of breaking the spec, but it has the same semantics, so I'm like cool with that. So this targets whatever is prefixed. In this case, it will target the section class. It will apply these styles, and then within the h1 of the nested thing, it will apply these styles. I think that makes sense. So let me show you what it does. We now have a server running, and we get this. Let's reload. I'm not cheating. This is like the actual thing. Hey. Now we've got a centered title. If we inspect the CSS, we can see that I have Chrome extensions, but here's the one class. Here's the nested stuff. Like this one has all the stuff attached to it, which is kind of cool. But it's not perfect. You see, like we haven't done a proper reset. So for the next demo, let's import a reset module from npm demo 2. This doesn't work. Please go away. Syntactic toggle. There we go. I spent a couple of hours to yesterday to make it so that this worked, but it doesn't. We're doing this whole JavaScript parsing thing. I'll have it working by this weekend, I reckon. So now we just need to assign it to a nothing. But basically, the money is here, where we say Sheetify, import CSS wipe, which is an npm thing, and we say get the compiled thing from there. It's just a module, and please include that into my style sheets. And then the second one is, oh, actually, we also want to have this other thing, and it's called CSS type base, and please also include that after that one in my style sheets. And it will do just that. And then the rest of the code is the same code we already saw. And if we now go here, we will have this reset. You see there's no weird borders. Everything is like border boxed because that's what a reset does. And it's got these h1 stylings on there. If we inspect this little element over here, it says, yeah, what does it do? Yeah, we've got a generic h1 thing, which does a bunch of rem stuff. But it's from npm. So say you have a component, you could just include a style sheet next to it, and you say Sheetify import the style sheet or the default style sheet for that thing, and it will just work, no overhead. Or if you have your own proper reset, which is probably better than mine, you can be like, oh, cool, I just want to use that thing, and it will just work. You can now start publishing things to npm and picking them from there. all you need to do is specify package.json, which either points to a CSS file or has a styles feed in the JSON, which points to a CSS file. And Sheetify will pick it up once you require it. It can also require local files, in case you were wondering. Cool. What was the next one? So this was how to style host elements, how do I reuse styles for NPM, how do I define global styles? So say you want to create your own little component library, or you want to like style all the buttons on your thing. You might want to have like a global style. This is how you do it. This is not how you do it. Well, this is a thing we're importing. This is how you do it. So what we're doing here is we're requiring this file called demo.css. And we say, please make this thing global. Don't prefix this. And then we get a prefix. We don't really get a prefix back. Just doing that because else it blows up. Hey, I'm honest about the bugs it has, but they will be fixed soon. Yeah, basically we just import the thing, say global, and let's see what it does. Demo3.js. Oh yeah, like you can see here, we're not attaching that one prefix to anything interesting down the page, so it should just work. Demo3. Yeah, no, it's not a very standard title. It's just a title, but that prefix thing no longer works because we've overridden it, which is kind of cool because it allows us to do some other stuff. I don't know what, but it allows us to. Okay, comparisons. So why have I built Sheetify? Why am I not using Sass? Well, Sass kind of like, as I said, it breaks the spec. Not my thing. The output is kind of huge. I'm working on a project right now, which is kind of fun. I didn't build it, which has 15,000 lines of Sass output. It's like, oh, fuck. You don't want to have that. It's like, how many megabytes of stuff am I downloading? It's not megabytes. It's getting close. Sass tends to do that. I've never seen a good Sass project. I've only seen big ones. It places a gap between the components and the styles, so you end up with like this whole namespacing stuff, BEM, and eventually everyone like starts debating, do I want two dashes or one dash or underscores or whatever, and then it always like turns out a bit icky. It doesn't reuse stuff from NPM, which everyone ends up writing their own thing or importing Bootstrap or some other huge thing, and it just turns out to be very, very messy. Though the people that build it are smart. It's just not for me, I guess. Sheetify versus CSS modules. Now, I really like CSS modules, but I don't like it completely, which is why I built this. I was like, guys, please don't override the CSS spec. Don't introduce your own custom selectors. And they were like, well, we like that. And I was like, cool, I'll just build my own, I guess. They don't do like really inline kind of stuff. I was like, oh, inline stuff is neat. Let's do that. They're both built on PostCSS, so most of the plugins are like very much interchangeable, which is slightly different philosophy. Versus React styles. So some people are like, should we even like write CSS anymore? I'm like, well, everyone knows CSS. Unless people do grids, because I didn't even know about grids. But most people know a part of CSS if you're in web dev. So React styles, what they are like these objects. And you use camel casing, like in an object in JavaScript. And you define properties on it, and then you like pass it directly into a React component, and that is how you do styling. And I'm like, hey, I don't like that. I kind of like using CSS because we all know and love CSS. It's like easier. They kind of like break the spec by doing that. They kind of lock you in because if you're like, I kind of like want to move away from React, and this other component doesn't like support it, then they're like, well, oh, shucks, you can't really move away. With Sheetify, you can just, you've got your CSS, and apart from that little host element, which is needed to like target the prefix element, everything works. So you can like freely move back to BEM if you think that's a better idea. This doesn't really allow you to do that. So it's not great. It's not great for designers either, I can imagine. It looks kind of scary. Oh yeah, future of Sheetify. I will be fixing the known bugs. It's got some async plugins from what's the thing called PostCSS that doesn't support because it, started working on it a long time before like they built that stuff. A way of like defining variables and like passing that, letting that trickle through your app is something I'm like thinking about because that would be neat. In your index, the CSS, you just define a bunch of CSS vars, and then the rest of your app you can just reuse them. I think that would be like rad. Having a debug mode so you don't like only have hashes. I think some other people have built that. That's mostly like the plan for the next 2 weeks. I'll get that in there. So, little recap of what we talked about today. Sheetify, quick inline styles. You can like output it to a file or a stream. I didn't mention that, but it's all node-based and it all outputs streams. So it's compatible with Browserify API in the command line, but also in JavaScript. So you can build your own whole development live reloading hot module, whatever server, using Sheetify, which is rad. It's composable. Kind of flexible. You can, have I specified how you pass in plugins? I've not. You can pass plugins to Sheetify. We're basically polyfilling all of the next CSS spec on the fly. Actually, I'll show you that. Here, so here we have Sheetify, and we say -u Sheetify CSS next, and it will be using CSS next as a plugin. Just so you know, that's how we do plugins. Or in JavaScript, there's another syntax, which is Browserify compatible. And you can like start publishing things to NPM and start reusing things, sharing things. If let's not build big things anymore because it doesn't work that great. Sheetify helps with that. Thank you for listening to me. Yay.